Thank you. Thank you, John, for having me tonight. And I really appreciate all of you being here this evening. And, regarding the title, the reason why I shifted the title was as I was creating this presentation for tonight, I realized there were a lot of themes that were coming up in the presentation. And the theme that kept coming up is this idea of connection. Connection with self, connection with the world. And what I found was that using Ayurvedic wisdom, what is really key is this idea of connecting with oneself. And to really reduce stress, it's going to involve that connection. So hopefully I'll inspire you, get you thinking about yourself in a different way. In about an hour, I'm really hoping you're going to look at anxiety and pain in a completely unique way. So I am curious, before I start, how many of you have kind of explored Ayurveda and are familiar with Ayurveda? Got a couple, a nice handful in the audience. Great. So hopefully the way that I approach it by blending a little bit of the Western medicine with Eastern will give you a perspective that's kind of unique. And I've done a lot of work. I've also most recently done some certification in neuro-linguistic programming. And I'm very fascinated with the subconscious mind. So hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that and get you thinking about what your deep brain is really processing and exploring kind of without you maybe at the conscious level being aware of it. So I'll fill that kind of gap in as we go along. So understanding pain, the big question I ask for anyone I meet that has pain is, what is the purpose of this pain? What is the purpose? Because so many come into the clinic or see me or talk to me in the coaching group, and they're challenged by their pain. They're challenged by their episodes of discomfort, and they're saying, why is this happening to me? I just don't understand. Why am I struggling so much? So I start to explore this with them. What's the purpose? Is there a purpose? And hey, is there a message? Is there a message? And if there's a message, any idea what it could be? And most of the time, there isn't an answer to this because this is why they're coming in. I love to have this conversation start thinking that way because what it does, it allows us to have some ownership and allows the relationship to be a little bit more collaborative. And so as I explore that, then I ask them, what do you think suffering is? Have you thought of the word suffering? And how about empowerment? You see where I'm going here? How about empowerment? Have you thought about being empowered? Let's explore these concepts. And what I've found is that Ayurvedic medicine, for those of you that have not been exposed to it, it is incredible. It opens your eyes up to an understanding of yourself and others that is beyond anything. And I hope to really get you excited about it if you haven't explored it, because it is such a fascinating and a really fun science to learn. So, suffering, the definition of suffering. Let's start with some basic understanding so we're on the same page. Suffering is the state of undergoing pain, distress, or hardship. The state of undergoing pain, distress, or hardship. And the question I'd ask you all is, do we actually have a choice? Do we have a choice? What do you guys think? Do we need to suffer? We got a yes over here. Oh, sometimes we do. Okay, we're going to explore that. We'll explore that. I love it. Empowerment. Empowerment. What a great word. It's the process of becoming stronger and more confident. What a cool concept, right? Becoming stronger and more confident. Now, how about this? Can empowerment reduce suffering? Got some yeses here, right? Let's explore that a little bit. So stress, which is so common. I feel like we've always had stress, yet right now, stress seems to be the buzz conversation everywhere I go. I'm stressed. My kids are stressed. My husband's stressed. I'm stressed at work. I'm stressed with my family. It's just such a common conversation that I feel as though I look back to my early years when I was a medical student, and my amazing father is sitting right here, and he remembers these stories. First year of medical school, I wanted to quit. I was struggling with really debilitating insomnia. It was so bad. It went on for about 3 months. And finally, we got to a point where, I went to see a psychiatrist and I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, given a prescription for Prozac. And I said, you know what? I don't think that's what it is. I don't think I'm depressed. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of low because I haven't been sleeping, but I don't think this is about depression. I didn't know what it was at that time, 23 years old. Though I'm going to tell you, I look back, and I was definitely stressed, though I didn't realize how stress had manifested as insomnia. And now that I've explored this conversation so much more with myself, my patients, my family, I've realized that understanding stress is probably the most important thing for all of us to do, and to realize how we present with it, because we all have very unique ways of showing stress. mind, body, spirit. So what I've realized is that there's this kind of conflict we have with the outer being and the inner being. Let's discuss this a little bit. So most individuals that are feeling stress, including myself at that time, okay, I was focused on this outer being of myself. And what I mean by outer being, well, outer being, what really makes that up? When you think about just general sense, my hair, my makeup, what I'm wearing, my clothes, things such as the home I'm living in, the car I'm driving, credentials, introduced as a neurologist, that's kind of part of my outer being, right? Well, what happens for a lot of individuals is that because there's so much focus on the outer being, it is the outer being that oftentimes we're trying to achieve and put energy into to create a happy inner being, right? And what happened is as I kept on seeing patients and I kept on working on my family, myself, using these concepts I learned in Ayurvedic medicine, which actually happened in medical school because I didn't take that Prozac, by the way. I studied Ayurveda. What I realized is that I really need to focus on my inner being. I didn't know how, though. I really didn't know. I honestly had no idea, okay? Because we're not taught on how to do that. That isn't something that, growing up here in the States, we aren't really explained and taught how to kind of go in there and explore that state of our inner selves. And that's the part that I was baffled with, yet I was really curious about. And so what I realized after 15 years of working with patients, working with coaching clients, is that if I can get people to go in a little bit, start to kind of take themselves into themselves versus being so much outward, suddenly that pain that they were experiencing started to go away. Suddenly the anxiety that they had started to decrease. Suddenly, that sleep issue that they had disappeared. It's like, okay, there's something happening here. Let me keep going there, right? Let's keep using this idea, right? You're with me so far, yeah? Okay, good. So inner being, number one, includes your beliefs. What are your beliefs? Okay? Your thought patterns. Big one. What are your thought patterns? And how do they either relate to those around you or how are they different? Okay? Your mindset. Your mindset about everything from, what kind of job you're going to have or not have, what kind of car you're going to drive, how many kids you should have. What's your mindset about things in life? And how does that get influenced by your thought patterns and your beliefs? This is what's really interesting. If there is conflict, and I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but if there's conflict with your own truth, what you believe is truth, and what the beliefs and thought patterns and mindset is that you've created over the course of time, that's the disconnect that creates pain. And I'll explain this a little bit more. And this is what creates stress. So for example, let's say I was raised to believe that I had to work really hard to succeed. That was just truth. That was told to me. Trupti, you're not going to succeed unless you work hard. You got to work really, really hard. If you work hard, you'll succeed. And let's say I work really hard, really hard, really hard, and I don't succeed. My thought pattern, my belief was that working hard meant success, yet I worked hard and I didn't succeed. What happened there? So in that conflict, what emerges from the conflict is stress. And when stress emerges, what happens then? Pain emerges, anxiety emerges, right? How about the idea that maybe it's not me working intensely to a point where I'm a perfectionist, the point that I'm pleasing, the point that I'm just going nonstop and doing zero self-care. How about that isn't the way I need to go? But instead I need to take a step back, maybe relax a little bit more, spend some more time in introspection to say what I really want to do. And I work less intensely, but I become more creative and find my passion in a way that doesn't push me to the degree of exhaustion. And how about in that space? That's what's going to give me happiness and peace and going to give me reduction in pain. And so that example is actually my truth. My mother, who I love dearly, we were kicked out of Africa. We had no money coming here. My dad worked hard, worked really hard. He's a physician, retired now. And we worked so hard, he worked so hard, that he was able to get us back on our feet after coming here with no money. So my mom's mantra to me was, Trupti, if you work hard, you're going to succeed. If you work hard, that's it. You will succeed. And it was a great lesson for mom to tell the daughter, right? You work hard. And yet I was kind of seeing that this working hard wasn't working as well for me as others that didn't seem to be doing the same thing as me. How come I saw someone else that I knew that graduated from college that didn't work as hard the way that I defined it in my thought pattern, my belief system, and yet was succeeding and really happy? What was happening there? So with thought patterns, a lot of it comes from early programming. A lot of it comes from what we're being told. And what we're being told very often is out of safety and protection, right? We're only told that because that is really what our parents want us to do to be safe, what our society wants for us, what maybe the cultural norm of the where we are is teaching us to be safe. And very often what happens is then we have a conflict with that, because our truth isn't the same as what the truth is that's told to us, and that's what generates pain. Does that make sense in a big picture? We'll go into this some more. Okay. So it is that creates a disconnect and creates kind of a shift in your emotional and spiritual health. And then really at the end of the day, what I find, and for those that really do recover from anxiety and pain, what they found is what I call is your Dharma, your purpose, that sense of your truth, the sense of why you're here, the sense of what you really want for you, not what you're doing for somebody else. It's what you're doing for you. So how do we get there? How do we really get there? So I want to ask you, if you really think about it, how much time, money, energy do you spend on your inner self? All of you are here. I know you're spending more time than most people are because you're here tonight. I do have to say, though, for most people I meet, there's an inadequate ratio, let's say, of time spent on the outer being and the inner being, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? More energy, more time is spent, more money is spent on the outer than the inner. And it's so interesting to me. I remember, because I do practice Western medicine, I remember there was a patient that had come in that had really severe migraines. And if you aren't aware of this, Botox, botulinum toxin, is approved for chronic migraines. It blocks one of the inflammatory peptides that's linked to pain. And this woman that came in to see me really wanted to get Botox for her severe migraines. And I said, I'm not sure if insurance is going to cover it, and because of the frequency of her headaches. And so as she was exiting the front, she was chatting with the front desk individual I have, and they're chatting about the Botox. And she said, I really want this to get rid of my migraines. The only thing is that it's so expensive, this and that. And then she asked at the front desk, she asked Jackie, my front desk woman, she said, and by the way, is it going to help with my wrinkles? And Jackie said, actually, yeah, she injects it in the same areas. It's the same location. So yeah, you'll get an improvement in your wrinkles. She's like, oh. You know what? I think I'll set up an appointment for it. And it was interesting because it's like, I heard her as she was leaving. She set that appointment up. She left, and I said, whoa, it was the cosmetic effect that convinced her to do the Botox injections, right? And so this is something that I've now come to accept. This was about 5 years ago. I've come to accept this idea that, there is something to that. Let's be honest. There's something about the outer. Though the reality is that the inner being, what's so interesting is someone like her, who I love her dearly, and I still see her today, if we work on getting rid of the pain, we work on really feeling good, and so the pain is reduced, gosh, she can start doing meditation, do some yoga, eat well, and she's going to look fantastic, right? She's going to look fantastic because she's taking care of herself on the inside. And yet our focus, a lot of the society is based on the outside. So this whole thing about inner and outer, I think it's interesting because I think we're in a shift now. I should say I know we're in a shift because things are changing. People are now coming in saying, you know what, I really don't want to be taking these things that I've been taking. These medications, they may be working to kind of quiet some things down, but I really do want to know, why do I get this pain? Why do I get the anxiety? Eventually I do want to taper off these prescriptions. What can you do to help me get there? And this is where we go. So let's take you down this path and then hopefully answer some questions. And so think about questions you might have, because I'm going to kind of go through Ayurveda somewhat quickly. It's a 5,000-year-old science. It was considered to be the first system of healing known to mankind. Okay? The reality is, as John was saying, all of these ancient civilizations had some beautiful wisdom. This all stems from the Vedic civilization, Southeast Asia. There was Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, homeopathy, all from the same base. As the civilization migrated down to India, Ayurveda got established. Moving up north, traditional Chinese medicine and homeopathy, all a similar base. Everyone's kind of saying the same thing, just using a little bit of different terminology. And so what Ayurveda really is this idea of looking at your life, Ayur means life, and using Vedic wisdom, ancient wisdom. So Ayur means life, Veda means wisdom. Okay, so it's the wisdom of living, the wisdom of longevity, the wisdom of like really feeling good for many years. And so it's kind of like the fountain of youth. And if you can start to get yourself to understand it in a way that becomes, really resonates with you, what you'll realize is you're going to have the fountain of youth right there to tap into. And what's beautiful is that the more you learn about it for yourself, you'll start to help others without even trying, because you'll start to see them in a way that they won't see themselves. And that becomes kind of nice because you can actually help guide others down this path, okay? So, big picture is Ayurveda, the basic concept is that every single living thing is made up of 5 elements: air, space, fire, earth, and water. Everything living, plant, animal, human, is made up of these 5 elements. All of us, when we're born, are born into certain elements at a higher, we'll say, proportion. Okay? So I may have more fire element at birth. You may have more wind element at birth, the air and space elements at birth. The key is to understand what your leading elements are. Are you more air and space element? We call them kind of wind people, Vata types, mover, goer, doer. Usually Vata types, wind type individuals, tend to have a smaller frame. They can be taller or shorter, but tend to have a smaller frame, tend to be ones that are very metabolically active, like to go and do, sometimes hungry, sometimes not hungry, sometimes going to bed at this time, sometimes going to bed at this time. They're like moving like the wind, always going, always doing, always saying yes to lots of things. Someone that you go to an event and they're talking all the time, a lot of wind. And so winds are awesome. They're fantastic when they're in balance. When they get out of balance, they're a little bit kind of exhausting because there's a lot of energy coming from them, okay? All of these states are beautiful when they're in balance. So you want to start thinking, who was I when I was really young? Because what happens during life is we start to shift a little bit. It gets hard to figure out our birth nature. So who was I when I was young? Was I that one that just loved to like run around, chit-chat, talk? Was I kind of a smaller frame individual? Was I somebody that loved to kind of just always be on the go and be involved? That's usually the wind. Creative people, artistic individuals have a lot of wind. Mind is always thinking, going, creating. Okay, musicians, a lot of wind to be in that space. Okay? The fire and water element people, the fire and water elements are the pitta type individuals. Now those types, different. More of a medium frame versus a smaller frame, more muscular, a little bit more competitive. They're the ones that like to win. They're the ones that just tend to have a little more fire to them. Great at conversations, great at speaking. They love being right. They love to like share their ideas. Fire gives you the ability to see. So they can see how things are done. They like to tell you how they think things should be. And very often they're correct. What they say is kind of, they can see the big picture and see how something should happen, how it should be done, right? So fire is in the nature. Then that individual tends to be one that's pretty driven, pretty focused, kind of has an idea and finishes it, Wind, you'll give them something to do. They're really enthusiastic. Oh, sure, I'll help you. But they've got so many things going on, they may kind of forget. Or fire, you tell them to do something, they'll get it done like right away. That's a fire, okay? Then the third type is the kapha, the earth. It's the earth and water element that creates the kapha individual. Bigger frame, a little bit more relaxed, tends to not really get perturbed by stress. Earth types just are kind of nice to have around because they're just relaxed. They tend to be ones that are very loving, very connected. They love being just around plants and cooking and being around very few people, more one-on-one. Winds like to be around a lot of people. Earth's, one-on-one conversations really are good for them. So key thing as you're thinking, I want you to start thinking about your birth nature. Who were you? Best way to answer it is who were you when you were young and when you had, if you have symptoms now, pre-symptom. Who were you before you had your symptoms, whatever symptoms you're struggling with, Think about when those started. Go backwards and say, when I last felt like optimal, mind, body, and spirit, what was my state? That's the best way to kind of think through this, okay? What happens is life gets in the way. We're born into a nature, and then life happens. We're pulled here, pulled there, given ideas, given thoughts. Between ages 0 to 7, we're in like a delta, theta brainwave, like a hypnotic state. You ever been hypnotized before? That state, from 0 to 7. So I was just at the grocery store the other day, and there was this sweet little boy that was right in front of me, and he wanted to get a candy bar, which, when we're little, we want to grab a candy bar. It's right there as we're checking out. And his mom, in a very kind, sweet way, remember, protective parents, right, said, don't eat that, that's bad for you. Okay? Oh, I'm sure I've said that, okay, when my kids are now 16 and 13. I'm learning all of this more and more now, and I'm realizing, what did I say when they were before age 7, right? So she said, don't eat that, that's bad. That's an example. When you say, don't eat that, that's bad, what does that little brain do with that food that's sitting there? Yeah, now it was a candy bar. Okay, so there's some truth to that. Okay, but what do you think their system does when it sees the candy bar? Right? Bad. That's bad. So let alone it is a candy bar, that probably won't get processed well, though their brain is also saying that's bad. So the more this little one hears that over and over and over and over and over, the deep brain buys that as truth. So there's a belief there. The candy bar is bad, And so this is how what ends up happening is the brain gets programmed into beliefs. All of these things then shift our nature and push us out of alignment with ourselves. And these are the things that, as I learned Ayurveda, as I started working with patients and clients, I started realizing, okay, so it's important to know your nature at birth. Though what's really interesting is to hear what you're doing now that is in conflict with what your real thoughts are, Because, hey, maybe if it's an organic dark chocolate bar, maybe it's not so bad, right? But your deep brain's like, that's bad, never eat that ever, right? And so it's all about the projection that we put on something, okay? And so what life does is it kind of pushes us off of our natural state. And this leads to disease. This is actually what leads to this inability to feel happy, to feel blissful, to feel authentic. Because you can't feel authentic because you've been kind of programmed to think certain things, and your brain doesn't buy that. So your natural state goes out of alignment, and we get disconnected with that authentic self, okay? So to go over this a little bit more. So let's say you're wondering, you're like, do I have a lot of wind to me? Now keep in mind, at birth, we have we call it the dominant dosha. Dosha is the actual name for this. The dosha is the mind-body type. Vata, Pitta, or Kapha. At birth, you have one of those three as your dominant. Very often, you have a secondary one. So I'm a Pitta, Kapha. Pitta is my lead. Kapha is my second. Thank goodness I have Kapha. It keeps me calm. Calmer. So we have a dominant, we have a secondary. Then life kind of pushes us, pulls us. Ideas come in, thoughts come in. We kind of navigate down this path. We don't know that we're supposed to follow a life in alignment with our nature. So maybe as a Pitta, I shouldn't take on a job as an attorney, because an attorney, that's like a classic Pitta. I'm married to one, so I know that. Pitta, attorneys, to be really good at their careers, they've got to be very sharp. They've got to be, be able to get up there, state the facts. If they're, on trial, say everything in a way that's very sharp and strong and direct and correct. That's all Pitta, right? So if I'm a Pitta at birth and I take on a career as an attorney, I can get more Pitta very easily. Now, when we're looking at this part of it, which I'll go through, what I'm going to have you think about is don't worry about what your birth nature is. Just think, is it possible that you've collected an excess of one of these three states? So it doesn't matter if you're a Vata at birth, a Pitta at birth, or a Kapha. All of us can get too restless. All of us can pick up too much wind, Vata energy. So how do you do that? Let's say you decide to take on a job in sales. Let's say you're moving and going and doing all the time. If you're skipping meals, if you're not drinking enough water, if you're eating a lot of cold foods, drinking a lot of cold drinks, that's going to make your system go more into a wind excess. We call it the restless energy state. And the symptoms that will come with wind energy, imagine yourself going into freeze. The three states, fight, flight, or freeze? Imagine going into freeze. That's what it feels like to be in a lot of wind state. You kind of contract in, you tighten up, tighten your neck, get a little maybe tension headache, tighten your stomach, maybe get constipated, get wind, gas, and bloating, right? Dry, tight colon, constipated. If you think of like a little squirrel that's out there eating an acorn, and then suddenly it senses danger, an animal's going to come and get it, it goes into freeze. What is it doing? It's trying to get small so it doesn't get seen, right? So as it's hiding and trying to get small, what is its mind doing? Oh my God, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. It's getting anxious. So what happens when people go into wind state, vata state, all of us can go there. All of us can get in that state. We go into freeze. What makes me sad, because I work with pain, a lot of individuals that come in, not a lot, I'll say all that come in with pain have too much of this element. They have too much wind, too much air and space element. They're all hiding. They're frozen like a little squirrel, waiting to be attacked. Okay? So that state produces a lot of pain. You have to look at pain as a wind excess state. And that's pretty much something that I can say uniformly. Anyone that walks in that has pain, that comes to the clinic or sees me, I tell them that wind is high. How did it get high? What's going on in your life? What are you scared of? What are you doing that's not in alignment with you? So the thing about Ayurveda that's beautiful is it doesn't just look at emotions, such as an anxious, worried mind. It looks at your physical body too. It's looking at your digestive system. It's saying, how's your gut? Is your gut carrying too much wind? Well, if that's the case, then you have a lot of gas, bloating, constipation. Is that you? Okay, let's talk about that. Let's try to get that wind down using some food, using spices, using maybe supplements, and of course, a lot of breath and mindfulness techniques, right? How about fire state? I call it the irritable energy state. So if you have a lot of fire, back to that analogy, let's say I go to law school and I decide to really push myself really hard. I get really intense because I really want to perfect what I'm doing. Perfectionism is a classic fire energy state. What can happen with too much fire is I can get fired up in my gut. I can start feeling reflux. I can get nausea. Lower digestive is diarrhea, loose stools. Fire, heat in the head, hot-headed, heard of that? Angry. Irritable. I just found it back there. Irritable, angry, hot-headed. Well, I mean, air-headed is vata, wind. When we say these things, like there's actually a meaning behind, she's so airheaded, or he's so airheaded, or I'm so airheaded today. What's going on with me? I'm windy. Okay, well, what did I eat yesterday? What did I do yesterday? Was I doing too much? Was I saying yes too much? Was I drinking cold things? Was I skipping meals? What's going on? Okay, ground yourself. Connect with Mother Nature. Get to bed. Start having a routine. Start saying some no's. There's ways to do this. This is very practical. The reality is that we can take ancient science, bring it into the West, and make it make a lot of sense, and actually use it to really help us, because it's so well delineated, these three states. So fire, hot-headed, irritable, feeling hot, that's a lot of pitta. If you feel cold, you're probably carrying too much wind, okay? Withdrawn is the third, the kapha energy state. And the withdrawn state, I kind of still think about this fight, flight, or freeze, okay? So fight is that irritable state, right? Flight is the withdrawn state. And freeze, I mentioned, is the wind state. Why am I calling that flight, the withdrawn state? Because literally it's like leaving. Let me just, there's a stress here. How about I just get out of here? I don't want to deal with it. I'm just going to pretend like it's not even happening. So I withdraw. And the withdrawn individual that has a lot of kapha, earth energy to them, is very depressed, is low, maybe fatigued in terms of physiology. How can we all get withdrawn just by energy state? If you're eating heavy foods, having a lot of dairy, a lot of gluten. Gluten's very sticky and heavy, and if you have a weak digestive system, or if you've had too much of it, it can be hard to clear. Candida overgrowth, if you've heard of that, that's a very common thing in a withdrawn state. We can get withdrawn by foods. We can get withdrawn just by not doing enough. Let's say I just decide I need to, sleep in a little bit more because I've been pushing myself too hard, and I start sleeping more and more and more. And have you noticed that the more you sleep, you get sleepier, right? It's that withdrawn energy. In fact, this is what I remember hearing this when I did my training, that if you actually get yourself out of bed at 6 a.m. every day, you will be more energetic all day than if you let yourself sleep in until 7, 8, or 9. Because 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is the kapha time of the morning. And 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. is the kapha time of the night, meaning all of us get a little kapha. Which we should, because the sun is setting, melatonin's getting released. We're supposed to start feeling sleepy so we can fall asleep at 10 o'clock. So energetically, we shift around that time. Now, what happens 6 to 10 a.m. if you decide to sleep? You get more kapha, you get more withdrawn, you get more earthy. You might get more congestion, more seasonal allergies, more frontal sinus congestion. You may feel like a sluggish gut. You may feel kind of heavy. You may be gaining weight. These are all things that happen with the withdrawn state. Make sense? So what ends up happening is that the adrenal system, which to me is like, there's these 2 little adrenal glands are sitting above your kidneys. They're the size of walnuts. They are being pushed so hard because all of us, myself included, jump into one of these 3 states. Restless, irritable, withdrawn, and the body is constantly saying, oh my God, here she goes again. She's in the restless state. Pull her back. Okay, here she goes again. She's withdrawn. Okay, pull her back. Every time we get out of alignment, every time we go into one of those 3, fight, flight, or freeze, we're doing this. We're turning on the hypothalamus. I call the hypothalamus, tip my pinky here, as the divine internal mother, or divine father. You could say either one. Divine internal parent that's in there. That's just trying to keep us in rhythm, trying to keep us connected, trying to keep us connected to what? Well, the hypothalamus tells us when to eat. We start feeling hungry, tells us when to go to bed, connects with the pineal gland, releases some melatonin. The hypothalamus regulates our body temperature. The hypothalamus is doing a lot to keep us kind of in balance. With what? With the sun and the moon. The big mom and dad up there, right? The sun is the real masculine energy. The moon is the female energy, right? So when the sun rises, we're supposed to what? Wake up. When the sun sets, we're supposed to what? Go to bed. You ask how many young kids are getting to bed on time, right? Most, young and older, are getting to bed beyond where they're supposed to be getting to bed. Ideal bedtime is 10 p.m. And very few people are following that. Very few people. If you look at the continental and look at all the states in the U.S., it was actually Hawaii that was the best in terms of bedtime routine. And there's some states you could probably guess that are not following at all the routine. And so what ends up happening is that if the hypothalamus isn't aligned with us, because we're not living in authenticity of ourselves, and we're not living in kind of relationship to sun and moon patterns, the body stays stressed. The body's just going to kind of activate that stress pathway. So hypothalamus talks to pituitary, talks to those little adrenal glands, says, make some cortisol. You know what? She's in danger. He's in danger. He's staying up late because he has to exit a danger situation. That's why he's staying up. No, I'm staying up to empty the dishwasher. That's all I'm doing, Or I skipped on my lunch today. Your deep reptilian brain is like, oh, I skipped lunch because there's something happening. I skipped lunch. Maybe I'm in danger. I couldn't eat. No, I skipped lunch because I just forgot to eat. So the high brain makes decisions that the low brain is saying, oh, you're making that decision because you're obviously not eating because there's something happening. You didn't have time to eat because you're in danger. So again, it keeps interpreting this kind of lack of self-care as danger. And problem is it goes from a little signal to a really intense signal, and the hypothalamus then takes a back seat, gets desensitized, and is like, fine. Divine internal mother and father is like, you know what? I gave you a little signal. What was your signal? I don't know. I gave you a little neck pain. I gave you a little gas and bloating. I gave you a little bit of feeling uneasy, maybe feeling stress. So you would get out of danger. When you skipped that meal, you got to bed late, you said yes to too many things. I gave you some symptoms there. You're supposed to get out of danger. What the heck are you doing? Why do you keep staying in danger? And as you keep on staying in that pattern of either restless energy, irritable energy, withdrawn energy, the hypothalamus is like, all right, I'm done. I'm out. And this is actually what happens. Physiologically, the actual terminology for this is called adrenal fatigue. Have you guys heard of adrenal fatigue? The newer terminology, which is really a mouthful, is hypothalamic pituitary adrenal maladaptation. Basically, I know, say that 3 times fast. They're not connected anymore. This whole back to connection I was saying was the theme as I was putting this together. I was like, connection is the theme. Connection with self. Which state do you kind of hang out in? Why do you go there? How often do you go there? How long do you stay there? And then connection really internally. How well is that hypothalamus talking to the organs that it's supposed to be chatting with? I study this in my practice. It was really sad. 90% of the patients I tested, we did a saliva blood test to look at cortisol samples during the day. 90% are flatlined. Not making cortisol from morning time until probably 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And they're waking up with fatigue, chronic pain, depression, all these symptoms. So what I've realized is that it really is something that if you start to connect with it, you can change that. If you start to just own the fact that I need to be more aware and mindful and just learn some things like you're doing tonight, you'll leave here and you'll start thinking about these things. And you'll actually start to realize that, now when I get a symptom, let me look back. Which of the 3 states am I in? How did I get there? Why did I stay there? And what can I do to change that? And that's all it takes. And honestly, this is the message that I've shared. And I promise you, that's what really gets people from like chronic symptoms down to freedom if they're diligent about it. You have to be diligent. That's the thing, okay? So the 3 types of headaches, for anyone that suffers with headaches, you don't have to say if you do. The 3 types of headaches, this to me was really interesting because I've trained in Western medicine, and we were told that there's migraine, there's tension headache, there's sinus headache, and there really wasn't a lot of art to seeing patients. I was kind of getting bored, and I was like, there's got to be more to this. So I studied Ayurveda for myself when I had my insomnia, and then I went back and studied it and got certified for my patients. And what I realized was that, there's very specific types of pain. So if you're really restless, moving, going, doing all the time, what the body does is go into freeze state. And what happens, you start to get neck discomfort. You can get pain at the back of your head. You get what we call the tension headache, okay? That one is typically associated with left-sided symptoms, which is interesting. If you have a lot of left-sided symptoms, think about your wind state. And it's also linked to sensitivity to noise, being very noise sensitive, okay? So if that's something that seems like, that sounds like me. Also feeling cold is a very common symptom with that. Feeling cold hands and feet. The fire state, the irritable state, shows up a little differently. It's more around the eyes. When you think about fire gives you the ability to see, so it involves your eyes. Red eyes, pain in the eyes, feeling pain right in this region here, behind the eyes, temple location. Feeling nausea is a classic fire symptom. Having a lot of fire, nausea is linked to that. So cooling things like peppermint is very helpful. Ginger actually can be helpful in a fresh form with fire energy. It's right-sided typically. Think about masculine energy, right-sided. Wind energy is more feminine energy, okay? And very sensitive to light. Again, the eyes are involved. So really light sensitive, okay? The 3rd type of headache, and by the way, that second one is a classic migraine. If you've ever had a migraine before, it's typically more moderate to severe intensity, usually has light sensitivity, there's nausea with it, it's one-sided, throbbing, severe. The wind headache doesn't get to be so severe. And in fact, what ends up happening, if you've been to a campfire, wind blows on the fire. So if you're really windy, meaning you carry a lot of wind energy, you have a lot of tension headaches, very excitable type energy, what can happen is the nerve endings start making inflammatory peptides. So wind can blow on the fire, and you can actually augment your fire state by being too windy for too long. Okay? The 3rd state is the withdrawn. It's that more sinus-type headache. If you're experiencing more congestion, more heaviness, more pressure and pain when bending forwards. That's a classic sinus headache. That's more the withdrawn energy state. And so the key here is to really just start to let these ideas percolate. Like I said, we went through a 5,000-year-old science relatively quickly. Hopefully I was able to summarize it and make it easier for you to understand, because it is kind of complicated, yet if understood, once you get it, it's actually really practical and really straightforward. And the idea is that pain, back to that first couple of slides, pain is really there to guide us. Pain is there to connect us. Pain isn't really a nuisance to our being. It's actually coming to let us know that we're in danger. That's what pain really is. Anxiety and fear is part of pain because it comes from a space of, I'm trying to protect myself. I'm trying to withdraw. I'm trying to hide from something that I think is dangerous. So they tie very much together. In fact, the data says that migraine people are 12 times more likely to have a panic attack. What I'll say is everyone I meet that has pain, there's always an underlying sense of, we'll call it stress, but it's a sense of unease, a sense of worry, a sense of fear. Fear of the attacks, fear of when the attack happens, will it ever go away? All this fear that feeds into it. But like I said, it's what creates the fire, creates the pain. Because very often fear is wind. It activates the fire, which is the pain, the more severe pain. So these are very much tied together. Okay? And to really overcome stress, to me, stress is really, it's that disconnect. It's that me living out of alignment with my natural state. And so step one to really feeling your best is really investing on that inner being, as we were talking about before, and think about what makes you happy. And what in your life right now is not making you happy? What is it, and what can you do about it to add some happiness, really? Because at the end of the day, what I found is that being content is really the key, I think, activator for a lot of people I meet, is that sense of discontent. The sense of unease comes from a sense of unhappiness. So a simple technique, because I'm going to give you a practical tool to use. Who here has done Nadi Shodhana, reverse nostril breathing? Oh, we got a good audience here. Okay. Nadi Shodhana is Nadi. There's 72,000 Nadis, channels in the body, right? It's amazing, isn't it? 72,000 channels. We've got to keep them open and flowing, and it's kind of hard to do that all the time. And so Shodhana is to clear and open the channels. Now, to really keep your body energetically happy and going and vibrant, you want to have flow. You don't want to be in that restricted state, okay? Because that restricted state is going to not only decrease blood flow and nutrient delivery, it's going to actually, physically, your restricted state will restrict your mind. So you won't do things. You won't be as vibrant. You won't allow yourself to step out of your comfort zone because you're in a restricted state. So a simple breath is Nadi Shodhana. And what's interesting about the right and left side in this breath is that what you're going to do with the breath, and I'll just do a little quick demo and then we can practice it together, is you're actually creating harmony between the right and left side of the brain. And why? It's because most of us are living in sympathetic dominant state, meaning restless, irritable, withdrawn. One of those three states that's throwing the adrenals off. So what I would love myself and all of you to do and to explore is how to be more often in a parasympathetic rest and relaxed state. Because really, danger is not there. It doesn't need to be there. It's what we perceive as danger. And if we can change the perception a little bit every day, it's amazing as long term, this is the kind of thing that will keep everybody really healthy and happy for many years to come. And I use oils. Does anyone use essential oils in here? Yeah, good. I mean, I have some real favorites. And, essential oils, the thing about essential oils is that for those that use them, I'm sure you understand this, is they can really get you connected with yourself very quickly. A lot of scents, we don't have time to go into all the different types of essential oils, but there's different ones for different doshas. Like rose is great and jasmine's great for the pitta dosha. Anytime you open your heart, it's really nice for that intense energy. Lavender, for example, is really good for the vata dosha. Calming, soothing, So using oils can be really nice because it can help you get grounded faster. So I often recommend putting some oils on your wrist before you start this breath technique. And the technique, the way that I do it, which is really simple, is I use my thumb and my ring finger. And what you want to do is you always want to start with your right hand, okay? And you want to cover the right nostril first, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to breathe in for 4 in my left, and then I'm going to cover the left nostril, breathe out for 8 on the right. I'm going to stay here, come in for 4 on the right, switch sides, out for 4, 8 on the left. I'll go through this, I'll do a cycle, I'll count with you, and then we can kind of try this together. So I'll do one cycle just to kind of show you, and then you guys can join me, okay? So I'm starting with my left nostril open, so I'm closing my right nostril. I'm going to go in for 4, change sides, out for 8. Stay here, in for 4. Change sides, out for 8. Stay here, in for 4. Change sides, out for 8. Stay here, in for 4. Change sides, out for 8. Extra credit, you can put your 2 fingers right on your third eye. It helps you kind of focus inward. It gives you a sense of that, the third eye is really that intuitive center. Gets you into being intuitive, which after tonight you're going to think about, how do I need to be? What makes me happy? How can I be more aligned? And let your intuition speak while you're breathing. Because what ends up happening is you kind of get these ahas. You only get the aha if you're not feeling stressed. You know, that like idea, the thought, oh, I get it. Like you're not going to get that when you're stressed out running from the bear. You only get that when your mind is calm and in rest and relaxed state. So it's interesting as I have patients practice this. This is like so simple and yet so incredibly powerful. And there's actually a study. They had a study, I think it was out of Mayo. 15 minutes a day of this breath brought blood pressure down by about 15 to 20 points. And that was after 1 month. Pretty impressive. Just breathing, right? So why don't we start there? Like that to me is like something I find interesting. I meet a lot of doctors and talk to a lot of physicians. I was like, why aren't we starting there? And if, you don't have the time to show patients in clinic, just give them a video. Just tell them to try it. And what's interesting is I think over the course of years, because I've seen the outcomes, I've gotten really confident about recommending it. I think a lot of people don't think it's powerful enough to recommend, The med is going to be stronger. That's going to be better. What's interesting is if we can turn off that fight or flight, turn off that sympathetic drive state, just be with ourselves. And I don't recommend 15 minutes a day. That's hard to start with. 2 minutes. And a great app, by the way, Insight Timer. It starts the gong, and then it gets you going. You can time it for 2 minutes, and then it turns off. You don't have to think about the time. You just breathe. And if 4 to 8 ratio is too much, you can do 2 to 4. Okay? But Insight Timer is a great little app. You can just download it. It's free. And then you can actually just start yourself with the breath, finish after 2 minutes. You like that? Do that once a day for a while. Go up to twice a day. Doing well with that? I don't know, move up to 4 minutes. Just see what happens. All these things that we talked about will start to make more sense to you because you get more and more and more connected. And it's doing that you get to your truth. At the end of the day, what I have found is that this idea of empowerment is really that process, like I mentioned, of getting stronger and more confident. You can only do that with knowledge, right? And what's the knowledge you need is knowledge of yourself, of who you are, why you're here, how, things started happening that didn't really go the right way. Listen, we're all human. We'll make mistakes. But what is it that we need to learn from that? And big message is really it's not happening to you, the pain. It's happening for you. Which a lot of people go, wait a second, huh? The 4 means it's actually really there to kind of guide you. If we can kind of look at pain as something that's happening for us to help us navigate, learn, understand, maybe shift a little bit, maybe learn to say some no's, maybe learn to have more water, maybe get to bed on time, do all these things. What happens is the pain does go away. I promise you. I've seen some really tough cases with pain relief that, to me, surprised me with doing some simple things. Okay? And my request for all of you, I love this quote. The Ayurvedic route to great health involves 2 simple steps, doing less and being more. So doing less, remember I mentioned the outward state, the outward being, the getting, the accomplishing, the all that stuff. We do enough of that. Let's do less and let's be more, right? Be more present, be more connected. Before we're going to go out there and try to, change the world, let's focus on us. Make sure we get ourselves figured out first. And then try to go out there. And once we do put the energy here, what we can do is so much greater and more effective, right?
So your dosha, born at birth, your prakriti.
Yes.
And then your vikruti.
Yes.
How do you, when instances happen that maybe are reversible, how can you that have made you kind of like in your vikruti and they're not reversible, how can you get closer to your prakriti in those instances?
Yeah. So vikruti and prakriti, what you're talking about is your birth nature and your imbalanced state is a vikruti. So you're saying when situations happen that push you into that vikruti, push you into the out of alignment state, right? That you are saying are reversible or not irreversible. Do you mind giving me an example of what something would be that's irreversible?
Traumatic brain injury.
So TBI, traumatic brain injury. So what's interesting about something that happens structurally, be it an injury to the physical body, right? There are certain ways of looking at why that happened. Okay? I know you're going to say, oh no, here she goes. But this is really what I would say is when something happens, what we have to do is we have to allow ourselves to adjust to what is our new normal. And the new normal isn't necessarily worse than what you were before. What Ayurveda can do is enhance your state that is physiological, that can be shiftable. If there's a structural injury, so someone comes in and says, hey, listen, I've had my gallbladder removed. Can we get the functional gallbladder going here? No, you don't have a gallbladder anymore, so that's off. But we're not going to focus on the fact you don't have the gallbladder. We figured out a way to now, with your new normal, find you and get you as authentic as you can be. Because really, that is all we can do. That doesn't mean we stop exploring, doesn't mean we stop growing. If anything, you might grow more, which is what usually happens. Honestly, I've had people come in with like some really, I just had a woman who just posted this on Facebook. She's so lovely. Her daughter had fallen off a horse, and her daughter was told she wasn't going to walk again. She just started walking. Now, this took a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of patience. In that scenario, she was told this is irreversible. In that scenario, she did shift. I'm not going to say that's everybody, but what's interesting is that in that process of while that was happening, the mom, who is a patient of mine, said, you know what? If she doesn't walk again, that's all right, because now we have this new space of what we're going to do. I have actually a passion for living now because I have something to fight for. I really didn't have that before. I didn't have that motivation to fight for anything. Now I have something. I have something now. I want to educate on this. I want to teach. I want to help those that are disabled. So what you have to do is whenever something happens, it's a frame shift. I know it's hard to hear. I absolutely understand it's hard to hear. Though it's a frame shift of the new normal. What am I going to do? Of course, we still keep trying. We're not going to give up. We're going to try to repair areas that are still potentially shiftable. I do think the brain is kind of cool. It's like a neuroplastic, very mobile. Yeah, there's always things happening, new networks developing. I never say anyone is stuck at a certain state just because TBI is there. I think anyone can shift. Though I do have to say, if there's actually like damage on the MRI, maybe like tissue that's necrotic or areas, of course, that part we can't change. But it doesn't mean the networks around it can't build and grow. We see that happen all the time. So just kind of like allow yourself to be in that space and just kind of keep on evolving and growing. And the fact that you're here is fantastic. It's fantastic. Hope that helps. Okay.
There was one question from somebody sent in was, where is your clinic?
Oh, good question. My clinic is in Glenview. It's just north of Chicago. And it's called Zira Mind and Body. And I have, because I do have some individuals that want to work with me that can't come to the clinic, I do have a coaching program too that I can do with individuals that need more one-on-one and can't come to the physical clinic.
Very good. And we do have the your website.
Yeah, TruptiGokaniMD.com.
And so they can always check on that.
And there's like videos and podcasts and different things just to kind of explore some more conversations with different individuals. And it's kind of been fun to get out there and just chat with others on these topics. And they draw different conversations out of me, you know. So you might be interested in hearing some of those talks.
As a psychiatrist and, the Western medicine, I have come to the point in which I feel that I literally cannot practice just Western medicine. I just cannot do it. I have taken some time off. I went to India and come back and try to integrate the things. And I just have to say this, for some reason, have never occurred to me that I can look at the being studying this, and I want to talk more with you. But it's like I'm very enthusiastic about this because it's like it has a lot of the things that you talk about has a lot of implication for what I do as well, because we have common denominator of like what people what they suffer with and what the pain is. So I am very, very thrilled that I have come tonight.
Energy and your light. You're light. You're like beaming. You're beaming. And I think the thing is with the medical practice nowadays, with physicians, the burnout is so high. Yes. And I do believe the burnout is high simply because we aren't able to see that side of people that they want us to see. So when I was having my insomnia and I was a medical student and from a very sweet doctor, offered the Prozac, and I said, that's not really what I want. I didn't know what I wanted. I knew it wasn't that. And I was hoping that there would be some understanding from the practitioner. And it's okay, because Western medicine, listen, thank God we have those tools, right? Oh, yeah. We need those tools. We need that proper training to understand when to use prescriptions wisely, how to use them when they're appropriate. The thing is, though, the other side of this, which is really the truth of the pain, the truth of the emotional issues, the Western medicine can only take you so far, as you know. I think we understand where Western medicine can go. We understand that. And I think the reality is everybody, patients-wise, are waking up to this because the internet is such, the media is such that we have attention now on these different forms of healing. The beauty is that we're in a space now, even pharmaceutical companies, and I do speak for pharma. I know that sounds crazy, but I do because I talk to doctors about both things. I tell them about prescriptions, wise use of prescriptions, and then how can we use these healing modalities? When I started practicing, we were giving Vicodin out. We were giving methadone prescriptions, fentanyl prescriptions. 15 years ago in pain, that was the common thing to do. And that's when I decided to go and study Ayurveda. So the reality is that the beauty is that we are now in a space that not only we can do this, I think patients are ready too. And I have to tell you, I think pharma companies are ready, which is nice. They actually are more looking for practitioners that can blend. How about that, right?
So
Thanks for coming.
I was having a really hard time figuring out which type I am.
Yeah.
So each one, as you went through and described it, there were parts that I was like, oh, that's definitely me.
Yeah.
And there were also parts that I was like, that is not at all me. Is that pretty typical?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You know, we have all 5 elements, right? We have all 5. So the reality is that we tend to live our lives, if we're in a balanced state, we'll live kind of in alignment with the more leading elements in us. But we have all 5, you know. That's part of our constitution, our nature is to have all 5 elements. Just some of them kind of like move us into a certain direction. If I'm more fire element in terms of personality, I'm going to be drawn towards certain types of foods and certain types of people. And so what you're saying I don't have, well, that's probably in a very lowered amount in your system, in your nature, you know?
Yeah.
And again, we have to think about your balanced state and you have to think about your imbalanced Vikruti state. So your balance is your Prakruti. That's your birth nature.
Okay.
Unfortunately, when we get thrown off, we start having symptoms, anxiety, pain, all that. We're in an imbalanced state. So that's a different you.
Yeah.
So whenever I work with people, I'm like, you want to get back to your authentic you.
Yeah.
And not be in that inauthentic state. Because the inauthentic state is going to show symptoms that, you know, will be out of alignment with your natural state. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. And opening your eyes to something different, right? Kind of different. Yeah. It's exciting, isn't it? Yeah. When I learned it, I was a 23-year-old medical student. Because I was, even though I born in Kampala, Uganda, came here, very Western. How old was I, Dad? Like a year and a half or so. Very young. Little. So grew up very Western, right? Very Western. So when I had that horrible insomnia cycle, I just started reading books. Just like you're coming here, I was like, oh, what's this thing about the 5 elements? What's Ayurveda about? I didn't even know what that was. So, but what was interesting is it made sense. Like it just so much made sense to me. Nothing else had made sense, but that made sense. So if it makes sense to you, explore it. Like what we're saying here, just explore it, learn. It'll be more and more powerful over the course of time as you let yourself kind of just resonate with it a little bit. And then it starts to be so clear. It's really fun to get clear, isn't it? Isn't it? Nice to be clear, yeah.